Right, hello, welcome back to another video. This one's going to be a bit different, but I hope you guys find this interesting, and I hope it gives you some inspiration. So today I'm going to be building a new gaming PC to upgrade my previous one. I'll be listing the parts from today's video in the description if you'd like to go ahead and follow this for your own build. Now before I get into the specs of today's build, it would really help out the channel if you could like and subscribe. But without further ado, let's get on with today's video. Okay, so for the CPU, I have the Intel Core i5-12400F. This is a 12th gen processor with clock speeds of up to 4.4 GHz. Next up, for the GPU, I'm going to be reusing my old one as it's perfectly fast enough for the games that I'll be running, and it's the AMD RX 580. It has 8GB of VRAM and can run most of the AAA titles at a good 120 to 140 frames per second at max settings. Next, for the motherboard, I have the H610M 2SH from Gigabyte. This motherboard uses one of the latest Intel chipsets and packs a ton of features, such as UEFI BIOS, TPM 2.0 chip, and plenty of USB ports for those of you who have colossal numbers of peripherals. For storage, I have gone with a single terabyte M.2 NVMe SSD from Crucial, which is faster than SATA drives as it connects directly to the CPU through the motherboard. Next up for my RAM, I have gone with 2 times 8GB, so 16GB in total, of DDR4 3200MHz RAM from Corsair. Those of you who love RGB will be pleased to know that this is the RGB edition, so as a wise man once said, RGB increases FPS. No, I'm joking, but it will look epic. Finally, for the PSU, I have gone with 700W 80 plus gold PSU from EVGA, which will provide more than enough power for the parts that I have chosen. Now at this point in the video, you may be wondering, hold on Zach, where is your case? And my answer to that would be, I'm skint. Now at some point I'll probably do a part 2, where I upgrade my RAM even further and add a sexy new case. However, we can be cheap. Now sorry if the audio quality is a bit odd, but I'm using my phone to record this. Anyway, so here we've got the motherboard. Let's get this open. Right. Okay, so I hope you can see that. Get a nice little SATA cable in the box. Let's put that to the side. And then here's the motherboard itself. Right, here we go. Now we can put that on top of the box. Now, if we, let's see, right, how do we get this open? And we're just going to cut that open. I should probably be wearing an anti-static something or another. And here is our CPU. Right. So I have actually opened this before because I need to check the contents of it. Fortunately, it already has pre-applied thermal paste to the cooler. So if we just slip this out, get a nice little book with a sticker, and then obviously through there you can see the cooler, and where is it, on top you've got the CPU. So we just slide that out through that little tab there, and let me just put that down there. We now have the CPU. Now before we put that in, we have this little socket here. So this little arm at the side. Now you don't want to ever touch the PCB on the top. You want to touch it by the sides. And then we're just going to get this little arm and ow, pull that back. That went a little too fast. Okay. And then in the top right corner, you're going to have this little lever, and you're going to slowly lift this back. Unlike the arm, we literally just massacred. And we're going to go into this little package here, I think is the best way of describing it. And we're going to take this out now. Again, hold it by the sides because you don't want to damage it. Right. Now, this is one of the most delicate installations in the whole part of computers, so you've got to be very, very careful. You want to take it by 2 fingers like that. I don't know if you can see this, but on the CPU here, you have a tiny little triangle in that corner. And you've got one, I don't know if the camera can focus on it, but you've got one on that metal bit as well. And then the rest of the corners are dots. So you want to take that triangle there and you want to line it up to the triangle on the bottom of the board. You can also have a look at some of the patterns and see if you can work out which way on the board it's supposed to be placed. So if we just drop that gently, there we go. We have it seated now. And then you just want to push this down. You're supposed to be able to push that down and this little bit will pop off, but it didn't work. Clearly it was a bit too stiff on my model, but then you just want to push that down and then slowly bring this lever, and I have to hold the side of the motherboard down. It's going to be a bit stiff, and then you're just going to hook it over there like that. And there we go, we have our CPU installed. Right, now for the next step, we are going to go into this little box here, and we're going to see if we can try and install the cooler. Now, it depends, guys, which type of cooler you have. If yours is too big, then you might want to move on to the RAM step, which you will be able to find timestamps for all of the components being inputted in the description, sorry. So if we just take this out, now you don't want to touch that thermal paste, guys. If you see right there, you've got thermal paste, you do not want to touch that. That is purely for the CPU. This just goes into those little holes. Now it will go into these holes, guys. It just depends whether or not there is a back plate that needs to be initiated. I'm feeling confident that there isn't. No, there we go. So you just want to push these in until they click. Some of them are going to be a little bit stiff, guys. You want to make sure they are going into the hole properly, obviously. And it feels like, are they all in? Right, once you have them all in, you want to get this little cable and plug from around the sides. This is going to be what powers the CPU cooler. You just want to make sure that that's not caught on anything. Right, this is going to be what powers your fan, so you need to make sure this is in nice and tight. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this and we're going to find it. It's different on all motherboards, guys, so you just got to look out. There should be some form of marking on the board, so you'll be able to find it. It's a nice little 4-pin socket on the board. It should look like 4 pins sticking up. So you want to find the best way of looping it around without causing too much trouble. Now, if you look at your little socket there, you'll see that you've got a big bit at the bottom and then the 4 little holes. So what you want to make sure, guys, is that you've got it the right way round. There is a little plate on here, and we're just going to slip, if it will go on, we're just going to slip that onto there. And now we have our CPU cooler installed. So now we have our CPU and cooler installed onto the motherboard. we are going to move on to the RAM. Now, I showed you this, guys, earlier, and this is going to be our RAM for today, so it's got nice amounts of RGB. I'm just going to slide this out of the packet, and we've got our 2 sticks of RAM. Now, you can go with any amounts of RAM you want, guys, but something that I would recommend is that you make sure your RAM matches your motherboard, and you want to make sure that you go with 2 sticks instead of 1 if you have the option, because that will spread the load out over the different cores of the CPU, which will actually make it seem faster. Now, if we just pop it out from the back here, guys, we've got our first stick of RAM. Now, if your motherboard has 4 of these slots, mine doesn't because it's micro ATX, but if your board does, you want to make sure that you follow the motherboard's instructions on which 2 to place it in, because often it will be every other slot that you want to place it in. Now, since mine only has 2, I don't need to worry about that, but that's always something to keep in mind. So there is a longer section along the edge and a shorter section. What you want to do is you want to make sure you match that up with the slot on your motherboard, and then you'll just be able to click it into place. A lot of people don't click this in properly, guys, so you've got to make sure that you put on enough pressure, but obviously not too much to damage your motherboard. So we're just going to slot back these little catches, which is going to make sure that we can install them properly. And then we're just going to line that up and press. Right, there you go, you heard that little click, and the side pieces have snapped into place. That means that it's successfully installed. So let's move on to our next stick, and then we're going to align it and give it a click. And there we go. The next one is installed. Now you can see it's very close to the edge of our CPU cooler, but fortunately it's just far enough away that it's not going to cause any problems. Right, next up, guys, we have this M.2 NVMe solid state drive, which I talked about earlier in the video. Now these things are quite small and they're a little bit fiddly, but as long as you've got the right tools, you should be able to install it just fine. Now, certain motherboards use screws to install these, and other motherboards use little clips like this one. Now, clips are a lot easier, but obviously if it's a screw, guys, you just got to screw it in using your average screwdriver. Now, something to keep in mind is that a lot of motherboard manufacturers will sometimes have these on the back of the board, so it's always worth checking there first before you decide to install anything. Fortunately, guys, for me, my motherboard, it's on the front here, so all we're going to do, now, don't think you've broken anything, it does slot in at a very odd angle, so if I just try and get there, right, there we go. So you're going to slot it in at about this angle, guys. Oh, let's hold the motherboard. Right, and now it's into the slot. You're just going to push down on the back. So now we've got that installed. Once I have got my case from my old computer cleared out of all the old components, I'll meet you back there. Right, okay, we are back again. I've got my old case ready. So we're going to get our motherboard in here. Right, now, so I have these screws. Don't know if you can see that on camera. They're going to be screwing in our motherboard. And just down here on the floor somewhere, I have a nifty little screwdriver. So, let's see if we can get this board in. Right. Now, as far as I'm aware, this motherboard did not come with an I/O shield. Now, if you don't know what one of those is, I will grab this one. This is the I/O shield from my old computer, and essentially it just goes over the I/O ports and makes it look all clean. This one didn't have one of those. And at some other point I will try and get another one of these that works for this motherboard. Now you want to be really careful here as to not scratch up any of the undersides. you want to make sure you get all the screw holes seated correctly. So motherboard's all seated. Now we're going to take our first screw. If I turn on the torch on my camera, hopefully we should be able to see this a little bit better. So we're going to go for this very bottom corner screw. And we're just going to screw that in. Now you don't want to do it too tightly, because that will stop us from being able to move the motherboard. Right, now we're going to get the next one, and we're going to find a screw further towards the middle of the motherboard that we are going to screw in. So I've gone for this one. Now the other thing to note is that not all motherboards are the same, and so what you'll find is certain motherboards, not all the holes will match the case. So you have to find the holes that do match the case and screw in those. I think that might be all the screw holes my motherboard has. Right, so we've got this installed. So you might be thinking, well, what's the next step? Well, actually, the next step's kind of interesting, because you may think, well, what about the graphics card, Zach? And, well, you're right, but the graphics card has to come a little further to the end still, because we've got a lot of these cables from the top of our case, where the ports are, which I'll show you near the end of the video, and some of these ports on the motherboard won't be accessible once the graphics card is in. So, or at least they'll be more difficult to access. So we're going to get these in first. Now, if you have a look at the bottom of some of these ports, I don't know if the camera will focus on that. No, I don't think it's going to focus on that. You have a text that will tell you what each of these do. And then likewise on the motherboard, it will give you a little indication at the bottom of what all of these plug into. So we've got a number of these cables. So for example, this one is one of the most notorious front I/O cables. Let's see if the camera can see that. There we go. This is a USB 3 port. Now these are big and chunky, and if you're not careful, you can actually rip the port off your motherboard trying to fit one of these. Now if we look on our motherboard, I believe, okay, no, that one's not USB 3.0. Now it is possible that this, okay, no, I was speaking too soon. We've got the USB 3.0 here, so we've got to make sure we line up the pins correctly. Now you'll see on here, please see the camera focus on it. Okay, if I put it over there, it does. You'll see this little one at the end is actually blanked out, which means you've got to look in this socket. There'll be one end that doesn't have a pin, and that shows you how you're supposed to align it. So if we take this, we are just going to have a look. So for me, the top right hand corner, as you're looking at the motherboard this way, has the blanked out pin. So we're going to put in the cable this way. Now let's see if we can get that in there. Okay, brilliant, that goes in. Now we're going to grab another one of these cables. So this is our audio cable. This is HD audio. So on the motherboard, we want to see if we can find a section that says about audio. It is again got a blank pin, which will help you align it with that of the motherboard. Now I see that my audio header is over here. Yes, these are called headers, guys. And my blank pin is the second in from the bottom left over there. So I know exactly how to align my audio cable. So that's just going to go in like that. There we go. Okay, now I think we'll get the more chunky ones out of the way first. So we'll have a look at this one again. And this is a standard USB, guys, so that is USB 2.0, which is slightly slower speeds, but these are often the ones used for keyboard and mouse. So if we have a look, we can have a look over the front of our motherboard, and we actually have 2 USB ports. And again, guys, it has a blank pin, so this is going to help you out. Now you can see on here, the blank pin is the top left corner, and that's going to help us a lot in this. So I'm going to put it into USB 1, and that's just going to click in there. There we go, guys, that's brilliant. Now, we've got a lot of these finer cables over here, and if we have a look at them, they all read different things. So this one says Power SW, that stands for your power switch. So you want to have a look on the motherboard and see if you've got a power switch header. Now usually, guys, these small ones will be on a long board like this, and you'll be able to see them from here. They have a little ledger underneath which tells you where they all plug in, and for example, this is the power switch, so this is the cable that you use to go to the button that turns on your computer. So if we have a look at this little ledger, it is very small and I am very blind, but there we go. So the power button on this little baby is the 3rd and 4th pin in on the top from the left. Now you want to make sure you get it round the right way. I'm not entirely sure which way around it goes, but a good word of advice is always have the text of the plug facing that way on the motherboard, and that should be the correct way around to plug it in. That will be the correct way to plug it in, so we're just going to click that in there, and then we're going to have a look for our next one. Now make sure you don't get these tangled up. We will be doing a bit of cable management afterwards, near the end of the video, but for now we just need to make sure we've got them all plugged in. And now that we've got all this done, we can do a tiny bit of cable management around the side here. We're going to wrap that around some of our cables to make it more neat and tidy. We've got the power supply. Now let's unbox this. We're going to take our, let me put it over here so you can see, guys. We're going to take our scissors, and we're just going to get into the power supply like this. Okay, we've now got that tape cut, and we should be able to slip our fingers in there. Yep, there we go, and get that open. Now it does open like this, and it's a very heavy package, guys, so you don't want to drop this. So first up, we've got a nice little user manual. That's going to tell us a bit about the power supply. We don't need that right now, but if you want to have a look at that at home, you're more than welcome to. We're just going to slip this open to reveal the cables. We've got a nice standard UK kettle lead here. As you can see here, it's nicely packaged in bubble wrap so that it doesn't get damaged in shipping. And it even comes with a nice little bag of screws so that we can screw it in later. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4 little screws, and we're just going to rest them on here. You can see we've got 4 little screw holes. I mean, we've got a few more, but 4 is all we need. We're going to grab one of these, and we're going to go from this bottom left corner . let's have a little look. We're going to put all these through this hole at the bottom here. This is the motherboard cable. So as you can see, ATX main connector. Now I believe it's here, although I don't actually know where that cable is on the motherboard. So we're going to leave it there for now, and then if anything needs changing, we can always do that later. Next up, we're going to have a look. What's this? This is our SATA connectors. So we want to make sure that we've got that underneath the other cables, as this one is actually going to just be left over here by the drive phase, so we can easily plug those in. So the Molex connector, we can actually connect up with this back Molex, which is going to allow us to, if I can get that in properly, it's going to allow us to have power for our fans. So we're now going to put the back panel on. It's a little bit dusty, as you can see. We're just going to slip that onto the case like this and slide it in like that. Make sure it's nice and tight. On the back here, we actually have holes like that, and so you're just going to screw these in. That's going to keep the back panel on. Guess what, guys? It's now time to install our GPU, which is, as some people think, one of the most exciting parts of the whole build. So again, guys, like the RAM, you have a short side and a long side, and you just want to make sure that that's matched up perfectly. That has now successfully been installed, I believe. There we go. So we just want to get in some little thumb screws there. And finally, we've just got to install this. And there we go. So we're going to get our kettle lead here first. We are going to press our power button. Good news, everything's turning on. We've got our RGB RAM there. The fan is on. Is it going to post? Okay, you've just heard the little beeper that we added in. Now, if everything's working correctly, we should see it boot on here. Here we go. So everything is working as expected. You can see here we've got our i5-12400F. Let me see if I can focus that. There we go. We've got our 16 gigabytes of RAM. And yeah. Look, it's showing up. We've got both sticks. So that is 2300 megahertz. Obviously, when you have things installed in a computer, often it shows up as slightly less megahertz. Okay, guys, now we have built the PC, and you know how to build it for yourself. There's a few things I ought to warn you about if you decided to build a PC for yourself. You must always make sure you buy compatible parts. Otherwise, you could risk damaging your whole PC or having parts that you can't choose and a hole in your bank account. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Also, while you're still here, why not check out some of these videos YouTube is recommending you?